Selamat siang. Welcome back to another Bali COVID-19 update. This is February 16th, 2022, and my name is Bruce. And the wind speed today is 10 kilometers per hour. Humidity is 77%, and the temperature is a cool 28.7 degrees Celsius up by my house here. And if my voice is a little strange today, I'm sick again, unfortunately. Everybody in the kampung is sick, and from what I hear, everybody in Singaraja is sick. Is this the Omicron variant? It could be. People don't want to get tested, and for the reason that they don't want to go into isolation. And some people just don't want to pay for it as well. So for whatever reason, we have a lot of sick people around here, not just me. So this is going to be a short one today. The PPKM, the restrictions have been extended for another week, as was expected, especially with the numbers that we have. And what are the main stories today? Singapore Airlines, it has arrived, and I will be talking about that as much as possible. This is just brand new. This happened less than a half an hour ago. And the government plans on reducing or ending the quarantine in the coming weeks and months. And so I'll be talking about that. And that will be the first main story. Now let's take a look at the numbers. Okay, I'm redoing the numbers temporarily while I look for a new source. I've lost my source for numbers. And so today it's going to be a slightly different. New cases in Bali, 1,862. Recoveries, 1,785. And deaths, 14. Deaths up compared to usual. Nationally, we set a record, and that will come up in a segment, 57,049. This is the new record for daily cases. In Indonesia, recoveries, 26,747. And deaths, 134. Far below when we had 2,000 deaths back in July. So looking at these numbers and looking at what the government is doing in terms of reducing quarantines, it's interesting. And there are a couple of segments here that talk specifically about that. And so let's get on with the first one. And so let's get started with the main story. Indonesia to cut quarantine period for travelers as COVID-19 numbers drop. Indonesia said on Monday that it plans to cut the quarantine period for travelers, both foreigners and citizens who have had a booster shot, from 5 days to 3 days, with officials pointing to signs of a slowdown in COVID-19 cases. And who said this? Pak Luhut, of course. The new rule will take effect starting on March 1st or earlier. And a lot of people are reporting that this is in effect already, but at this point, right now, an SE has not been issued yet. The SE has to be issued before it is official. Quarantine may be lifted on April 1st. Quarantine may be lifted on April 1st if the situation further improves, according to Pak Luhut. He said signs that we have reached the peak are there, judging from the decline in daily new cases, active cases, and hospitalization rates. And Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Airlangga Hartarto, said the travel bubble for visitors from Singapore to Batam and Bintan will start on February 18th, and quarantine-free travel arrangements will extend to a third island, Karimun. However, he did not give any details. Are we past the peak? Dr. Windu Purnomo, an epidemiologist from Airlangga University, said cases in Jakarta, which made up a significant portion of national tally, have also passed their peak. Currently, we are already seeing a downward trend, he said. But we still need to observe if this would be consistent or if this would be fluctuating. Hopefully, it would be consistent, provided Jakarta residents stick to strict health protocols. And Health Minister Pak Budi pointed to other favorable trends. He said the number of those hospitalized remained at between 30 to 40% to that of the Delta wave. More than half of those hospitalized were also asymptomatic or had mild symptoms. Far fewer people were also dying from COVID-19, he said. He added, we don't see any possibility of the 110 figure rising to 500, let alone 1,000. Well, the next day it rose again, but nowhere near 500. That's impossible, he said. And the last main story, Singapore Airlines has landed. Yes. How full was it? That's not clear yet. From a report of a passenger on board, she said it was about 35% full. And so, not a lot of people, but it's a start. And so we have a commercial airliner flying in with people. There'll be more to update on this on Sunday. And just to update the previous segment, it is official. The quarantine period is now 3 days, starting today. Okay, let's get on with the rest of the news. That was a short main story. And as I mentioned in the introduction, Indonesia has a record number of cases. Indonesia reports record 57,049 new coronavirus cases. According to Task Force spokesman Pak Wiku, who I've mentioned many times before, the national figure for positive cases in this third wave increased sharply and faster compared to the second wave. But the death rate is far lower than the Delta surge, when Indonesia reported around 2,000 deaths a day. And as I noted in the numbers section, there were 134 deaths related to COVID on Tuesday. Hospital occupancy rate is around 33% compared to 77% during the Delta surge. Up to now, Indonesia recorded 4.9 million infections with more than 145,000 deaths. The rollout of vaccines remains slow, with only half of the 270 million population inoculated with 2 doses, as authorities struggle to procure enough shots. That's not good news. What is the situation with COVID in Indonesia? Daily COVID-19 fatalities exceed 100 as cases soar. Daily fatalities from COVID-19 in Indonesia have reached triple digits for the past 3 days, and a level hasn't been reached since last September. And cases continue to rise due to the Omicron variant. On Saturday, there were more than 55,200 confirmed cases, which was slightly lower than the record high, 58,700 on July 15th last year. And if you remember, that was when Delta was out of control. The number of COVID-19 patients that are currently in treatment or self-isolation has risen to 352,800 as of Sunday. Despite the supposedly milder symptoms, the Omicron variant could still pose a significant risk for people with comorbidities, the elderly, immunocompromised people, or the unvaccinated. And in Jakarta and Bali, more than 50% of hospital beds allocated to treat COVID-19 patients were occupied as of Saturday, according to the Health Ministry. University of Indonesia School of Medicine professor Chandra Yoga Aditama, and I talked about him before, has called on the public and authorities not to underestimate Omicron variant. He called on the public to continue complying with health protocols, adding that the government should also strictly enforce public activity restrictions, that's PPKM, as well as double down on testing and contact tracing in order to identify new cases as soon as possible. More on COVID-19 in Indonesia. The president once again is calling for calm in the face of rising numbers of new cases and deaths and hospitalizations. The president urged people not to leave and travel unless absolutely necessary, stick around home, and be disciplined in implementing health protocols. Of course, we've heard this many times. And the president said the surge is not unexpected. It had been predicted, and so there's no real cause for concern now. He said the COVID-19 vaccine booster shots are also needed for eligible persons who fully get vaccinated. As of February 12th, just a few days ago, some 135.2 million Indonesians have been fully vaccinated, while the number of recipients of booster shots has reached 6.8 million, so not very much yet. And a little history, remember when did Omicron come here? First case was reported on December 16th, so just 2 months ago. And look at where we are now. One senior legislator said in order to stem the spread of the variant, the government should increase surveillance at international travel entry points at airports across the country. We're spreading it among ourselves right now. People bringing it in from overseas is not the big issue. Big issue is everybody here spreading it, partly because people are not wearing masks anymore and social distancing is non-existent. As we heard it in the main story, the government is saying, okay, things are under control, numbers are going down now, and then, okay, numbers went up the next day just after they said that. Doesn't it always happen that way? Well, too soon to claim Omicron reached its peak, epidemiologist. And who is the epidemiologist quoted in the story? Who else? What? Dickie Budiman from Griffith University. He's always being quoted by people. He said he believes it's still too early for the Indonesian government to claim that the Omicron variant has reached its peak in spreading. He said determining a coronavirus transmission must be backed by statistics on day testing. Meanwhile, the data that now exists has not backed the claim, he said. And Pakdiki noted that large countries can potentially see outbreaks in smaller regions with various peaks and differs from the Delta wave that spread simultaneously. And so, have we reached the peak or not? I don't know, but the government seems to be ready to go ahead under the assumption that we have. And there have been a lot of questions. I have questions about this, about why Indonesians have suddenly stopped following the rules about things. For a long time, they were very good about wearing masks and, well, never social distancing, but wearing masks and washing hands and doing the temperature thing when you went in. And then PL was introduced, the Peduli Lindungi app that was supposed to be used everywhere and used in very few places in Singaraja, in fact. And so there's this trend of getting more and more lax with the virus. Well, the true new normal, why Indonesians are sick of flimsy lockdowns. As the Omicron variant raged through the country, case numbers soared into tens of thousands and public restrictions were tightened. Indonesians should have found themselves in a state of high alert, but many seem to have not gotten the memo. On February 4th, Jakarta's public order agency, Satpol PP, stated that his team had gotten up to 170 events that they had to break up during the month of January because of crowd control concerns. In late January, thousands of maskless concert goers attended a performance by musicians Tri Suwaka and Nabila Maharani in Subang, West Java, leading to the summary closure of the public park where the concert was held. And things continued with Chinese New Year, not here, but in Java, where celebrations continued to be held despite orders not to hold them. However, according to this article, lack of discipline has not come out of thin air. After almost 2 straight years of pandemic and mixed reviews of the government's handling of the crisis, Indonesians are sliding into apathy and barely concealed desperation. According to a professor of sociology at Airlines University, lockdowns abroad are implemented with strong economic and social assistance from the government, not in Indonesia. Plus, many are concerned to see the inconsistencies in how the lockdown restrictions were implemented in real life. He said people watch the news, they see politicians breaking lockdown rules, celebrities getting away with not being quarantined after returning abroad. This convinces them that they don't have to follow the rules to the letter because the implementation is unfair anyway. Doubts began to rise over the lockdown rules' fickle nature and their inconsistent enforcement, and the government began to struggle to combat disinformation. The local government had a great idea of working with popular religious leaders to educate their congregations about the pandemic, said Azari, an award-winning writer based in Aceh. But new religious leaders emerged preaching conspiracy theories. They started small with only 100 to 200 people attending, but their gossip coalesced there and reached the countryside. Eventually, they started to erode the authority of established religious leaders. And Azari continues, I think people who want to follow the protocols are surrounded and defeated. We're alone. We see people meeting each other without masks, crowds everywhere, and everything seems normal. Eventually, even I'm losing my own sense of vigilance. Even if lockdown rules are magically imposed again, he is skeptical. He said, there will be some forms of resistance. We will say yes to Jakarta's demands, but in the end, we will do whatever we want. And ain't that the truth? How is Indonesia doing economically? Sri Mulyani, our finance minister, economic recovery is almost even, only Bali is still minus. Citing data from Central Statistics Agency, the BPS, the economic recovery was marked by an increase in economic growth rate that occurred in almost all islands throughout 2021. Economic growth in Java is recorded as the biggest contributor to the national economic growth. However, it only grew 3.8% as opposed to the national growth rate of 3.89%. Sumatra contributed 21.7%, Kalimantan 8.25%, Sulawesi 6.8%. This is to the national economic growth. Java 57.89%. And what about Bali? 0.07%. The economic growth rate for Bali at the end of 2021 was 2.47, negative 2.47. Although this was better than the 2020 growth of negative 9.3%. And of course, the finance minister blamed this on over-reliance on tourism in Bali, and she's talked about this before, as have many people. She said that she hopes Bali's recovery will be faster in 2022 because the government's opened the gate for foreign tourists to Bali and allowed direct flights. Although, so far we have 6 people on direct flights, but who knows, in another day we might have some more. And so she hopes Bali's tourism sector will return to life soon. And Pak Sandiaga, what does Pak Sandiaga have to say about Bali? Bali needs more sports tourism, and he's talked about this before. We've just participated, he said, in an event for the revival of Bali's tourism and economy. We also contributed to the governor's charity golf tournament and saw the enthusiasm of creative economy players, 70% of which are outside Bali. And I mentioned that before, I think about a week ago. The tourism minister said the Bali provincial government's preparing a sprint rally and speed rally race circuit on a 150 to 200 hectare plot of land in Jembrana Regency to be managed by a regional plantation company. And Pak Uno said Jembrana has a lot of natural beauty, and sports tourism is not only presented in Badung but also in Jembrana because we have initiated a circuit that will use our special allocation funding. We'll build it together with the Jembrana district, and I talked about that in a segment on Jembrana about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this will hopefully become a cue for economic revival. So more race circuits, and we're going to have one here in Bali. The good news, this will employ 300 workers. Pak Uno said that the Ocean Man Race will be back in June in Sanur, and the World Cup for Ocean Open Water Swimming, and that this is a world-class event. And so this will also help revive economic tourism to Bali. More and more and more on tourism, tourism, tourism. Let's get some other development. And some more on MotoGP. In the last video, there were, I think, 3 segments on MotoGP. Here's one, MotoGP Mandalika, NTB praises riders for promoting tourism in Lombok. The Nusa Tenggara government deemed the 2022 MotoGP preseason testing at the Mandalika circuit as being a blessing for promoting tourism. According to the province's tourism agency head, Alhamdulillah, NTB receives a blessing from MotoGP preseason events. We get to promote tourism free from the riders. They travel in the bubble areas and promote the beauty of Mandalika Lombok. He said the preseason test brought various positive impacts for the province, not only in the tourism sector, but also for economic growth in general. And he said in the future there will also be more gates for promotion, so we all have to be prepared. He continued, the MotoGP is a great promotional event, especially with the help of the riders. We surely need to create an extraordinary image of the region. And he encouraged all stakeholders and local community to keep developing tourism in NTB province to spoil tourists. I wonder if he was alluding to the protests that I talked about in the last video. I don't know. And here is something interesting on Gianyar and Ubud in Tagalog. Wow, I have not heard of this. And well, you know, I live in Singaraja, I don't live in Ubud, but I'm down in Ubud 2 or 3 times a year to visit friends. Gianyar Splash's central Megaproject worth Indonesian rupiah 34.3 trillion. Electric bus will be provided in Ubud. So in 2023, not this year, Gianyar Regency will get a mega project from the central government, and it is worth a ton, as the heading for the segment said, and this project is part of National Tourism Strategic Area, KSPN project. The area being targeted specifically includes 3 sub-districts of Gianyar, Ubud, Tagalog, and Payangan. And the project is called the Ulapan Project. In this project, Ubud will be reorganized. Oh, now this is interesting because so far the study of the central government has shown that Ubud tourism has experienced a saturation point. Okay, now, if you've been in Ubud before the pandemic, you know traffic was crazy. Walking down the sidewalks, forget it. You had to walk out in the street. You walk out in the street, you took a chance of getting run over. The sidewalks so narrow, people parking everywhere. Ubud was a mess to get around, just kind of like downtown Singaraja. How is it saturated? Saturated in terms of traffic and development. Therefore, pedestrian and road facilities will undergo major changes. There will be no new development allowed in Ubud. Now that's that's interesting. How's that going to work? Every new facility, such as hotels and other tourism accommodations, will be directed to Tagalong and Payangan. In accessing these three sub-districts, tourists will be provided with electric buses. According to a spokesperson, Ubud was picked for this because it's become a national tourism area that's currently at saturation point, as I said. And he said, tourism visits in Ubud are already at a threshold. If there's no improvement, then visits will decrease because tourism is saturated. One cause is traffic jams. One of the reasons he said for the traffic jams is because people park on the side of the road because there are no car parks. And so there are going to be two solutions to the problem. Construction of central parking facilities. The Astina Ubud field will be dredged and made into a parking lot down below ground, and above will be used as a field. The basements will be capable of holding 7,000 cars, and in addition there'll also be a central Ubud traditional market parking lot, and thus no need for people to park on the side of the road. And the sidewalks are going to be widened, and roads with one-way access will be narrowed so that only one car can go through, not two. Okay, so they've been looking at the traffic flow, I guess, finally, after a long time, and have decided to do something about it. So, some big changes coming for Ubud. That'll be interesting. Now, they're going to start in 2023. Hopefully, tourism will be back by then, so that will be even more of a mess with all this work going on with tourists here. Don't know why they don't get it started now while there's nobody there. And what's happening in Bali with bars and restaurants? Bali Boozy runs afoul with the law. I never heard of this before. Bali Boozy Kitchen and Bar on Jalan Raya Batu Beling in North Kuta was closed, with police taping it up on Saturday night. A joint team from the Badung police were there to do this. The action was taken because the bar manager was violating health protocols. And according to this article, patrols around Bali have been increased recently because we've moved up to level 3. And so it's a good time to look for people violating the protocols Saturday night in bar areas, bar and restaurant areas, right? Especially down in North Kuta area. This particular open to the street indoor-outdoor bar has been one of the busiest local bars in the area since a year ago, popular with young local kids enjoying a round of arak or two. The place is famed for its selection of arak shots. Anybody been there before? Police noticed that the guests were not keeping their distance from each other, and the bar wasn't using the PL app. Who is? The Badung Satpol chief said that his party had sent a call to the owner of the bar to come in to present further information, and one of the things I want to see is a complete business license. And regarding the sanctions, the chief said that it was temporary in form of a written warning and closing for a week. Bar can open again if everything is straightened out. However, if things are not straightened out, it could be closed permanently. And witnesses at the night, I like this, confirmed that when joint officers arrived in front of the bar during the patrol, visitors who were in a drunken state began shouting at the officers in the patrol car. Not long after, another patrol vehicle from Badung returned to the location and everybody was sent home. No updates and no wrap-up for today. Thanks for viewing. If you found this useful, helpful, not irritating, humorous, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And hopefully I will be feeling better on Sunday. I have a nurse taking care of me right now. So that's it. Thanks for viewing. Stay safe. Be kind to someone today. And I will see you on Sunday.